This is your one and only 𝐈𝐸𝐻81 with your daily dose of video goodness, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Freeform Friday, where we play some random video game, and today's game is called Deadside. On the Steam store, they have Deadside listed as a hardcore multiplayer shooter with survival elements, PvP, PvE, open world, realistic weapons, and crafting and base building. So when I read that, I thought, oh, this sounds kind of like Rust, DayZ, all those style games. I was like, that sounds cool. I like that. Let's check it out. Oh boy, I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this video because I did not like this game at all, like not even like a little tiny bit. And I gave it a really good hard chance. And even thanks to 𝐈𝐻, I gave it even more of a chance than I would have had he not offered to join me. But I did not let the enjoyment I get of playing games with friends skew my view of this game. Because as we all know, a complete and total dumpster fire can be a good time if you have good company. But before we jump into my thoughts on this game, I want to inform you that this is an early access game. As you saw there at the main screen, it tells you that it is not an accurate representation of the finished product. So while I do not enjoy this game and don't really like it at all right now, that could change in the future. Anyway, on the Steam store, this game sets at mostly positive and very positive reviews. Where to start? Let's start with the map. The map is huge, but the map feels empty and devoid of all life. There is nothing. It's just a giant. Now it's pretty to look at. There's pretty trees, pretty scenery, all of that, but that doesn't make it feel alive. Now, there are NPCs in the form of humans. There's other human NPCs on the map at specific locations, and some just kind of patrol around from what I saw. But some intermittent NPC action does not make a map feel alive. This is compounded by the fact that the map is really large and there is no way to travel fast other than walking, and a majority of the time the game just feels straight up like a walking simulator. And to be honest with you, I feel like a lot of the problems that, well, I wouldn't say a lot, but there's a bunch of problems that I have with this game that could easily be solved just by having vehicles in the game that are just randomly scattered wherever, so you could just pick one up as needed and move faster across the map instead of just aimlessly not aimlessly walking, but walking for what feels like ever. I swear I spent more time walking in the time that I spent with this game than I did doing anything else. Now, I mentioned that there is AI. Let's talk about how good that AI is because, you know, that's something that people care about. It's meh. It's not the worst I've seen. It's not the most amazing I've seen. It's just run-of-the-mill AI. I don't really have too many complaints about it. It did give a challenge, but it seems kind of like at times the AI is aimbotting you, but at the same time, it gets easily bewildered by melee attacks and shoots directly through you and you take no damage. So it has its pros and its cons. It's also relatively easy to bring the AI down. A lot of times you can just easily one-shot the AI without much issues, especially if you can get the jump on it. The downside is when it gets the jump on you, and I had a lot of times where I had a really difficult time telling where I was being shot from, and then once I knew in what direction I was being shot from, I had a really difficult time seeing the AI in the woods or forest or whatever. If you're out in an open field or in a base where there's a lot of contrast between the player and, or I should say the NPC, not the player, a lot of contrast between the NPC and the background, it wasn't too bad, obviously. But when the AI is in the forest, especially when they're in camo, that camo works just like it would IRL. They are extremely difficult to see, which this is not necessarily a bad thing. It's frustrating, yes, but not all frustrating things are a bad thing. One thing that I would prefer with it, however, is that it didn't always feel like I was getting aimbotted, because there were times where I'd be at a distance, you would hear it shooting, it would miss you, and then there were other times that it was just one shot, bam, you're dead. Now, in most cases, being dead is not the worst thing ever. You run back, you get your body, and it's whatever. In this game, it's extremely frustrating. So, first off, you can't always decide on where you're going to spawn at. You can choose the city or town or point of interest that you want to spawn at if you have the proper reputation points. In order to get reputation points, you kill NPCs, you get their dog tags, and then you sell those dog tags in a safe zone at the trader. You can also spawn at your base if you have a base set up, but that's a whole other line of frustration all of its own that we'll talk about here in a minute. So if you don't have a base and you don't have reputation points, you just spawn at a random spot on the map. Now, sometimes this isn't a big deal because you can end up spawning relatively close to where you died at, and I had that happen. Wasn't a big deal. Other times it spawns you extremely far away and you're back to playing Walking Simulator because there are no forms of quick travel or vehicles or anything. You're just walking, again, more, through the void of the forest with no life. Now, I get why they chose to do some of these things, and it's for PvP reasons. Now, I was playing on a PvE server, but for PvP situations, you don't want somebody literally spawning right next to your base if they're trying to raid your base and just running back in naked. I've seen what that does because Last Oasis has a thing similar to that where you can spawn close to your body. You just do that, you run right back, and it's just a constant wave of people if it's a large clan attacking your base. With this game, they've eliminated that situation by forcing you to spawn in a random location, which could be 200 or 2,000 kilometers or whatever away, or as close as like 500 or 600 kilometers away. You don't know. And eventually, even if they do have reputation points and can spawn at a city or town or point of interest or whatever that's close by to the base that they are raiding, eventually they are going to run out. But at the same time, the frustration that comes from this could be easily dealt with if you just had a vehicle option or a fast travel option that got you someplace relatively close to your body or something. I think Last Oasis did a situation where every time you spawn, it's close to your body. It then spawns you further away if you keep doing it over and over and over again. And that's like on a cooldown or something like that. I don't know. All I know is every time I died and I had to run over 2,000 kilometers away to my body, it was super freaking frustrating, especially when the AI just one-shot you out of nowhere. You didn't see them and you had no idea where it was coming from and you didn't even get a chance to respawn. It's boom, you're dead. And then you're running back to your body and you just spend so much time running. If it was a situation where I could just pick up a random vehicle, even if it was low on gas and didn't get me all the way there, if it just propelled me a little bit, 200, 300 kilometers that I didn't have to walk, that I could just zoom down really quickly, something, anything. But this game doesn't have that option. You got to be okay with walking. The other thing is there's no type of like bedroll or one-use bedroll or anything like that you can just slap down when you're raiding a base, whether it's NPCs or player. You don't have that option. Your only option to respawn at something you own is your respawn point that you can only place in your base. Now let's talk about bases. So in order to make a base or put down a base, you need to put down a land claim. That's fine. We've seen that. Lots of games do that. Don't have a problem with that. The problem I have is land claims have to be extremely far from any point of interest on the map and relatively far from other player bases. It's actually a lot less further that you have to be from another player base than you do a POI on the map. So what happens is you get your land claim out and you just spend all this time walking around trying to find a place to put down your base. And it could take you hours of just walking around with this land claim out until it turns green or whatever color it turns. I don't know. I gave up on trying to place mine. But anyway, you run around with it until you eventually find a spot where you can put the thing down. And from what I read when it comes to PvP, people can't really destroy bases either. They have to kill you or whoever is the base owner. You drop a key when they kill you, and then they can use that key to get into your base and loot your stuff. So you're thinking, well, that's great. I can have my base, and once I spend all of that time putting down a base, I will never lose it. That's true. That's if you can find a place to put down your base on the server that you're on, because the map is only so big. If it's a highly populated server, it's going to quickly get to a point where there are no spots left to put down bases because you can't just put down a base anywhere. On top of this, if you do finally manage to put down a base and you have your awesome epic base and it's built and it's everything you wanted it to be and you have your spawn point in there, if you're on the opposite side of the map and you die, you have two options. You either need the rep points to spawn close by at a close by POI, spawn all the way at the other side of the map at your base spawn point, or spawn just anywhere on the map randomly. So from a PvP standpoint, half of that doesn't even make sense, because even if somebody did manage to come and try to raid your base, you could just hunker down inside the thing until they got bored and went about their way, because you don't really have to come out if there's no real way for them to raid their base. Now, I don't know if this has changed. The post that I read was back in 2020, but the game has only had one update since 2020. So yeah, its last update was actually relatively recent, happening on June 23rd, and then since then it's had 2 hotfixes, which is nice to know that they hotfix issues or big game-breaking issues relatively quickly. But before that, the last update that happened before the June 23rd update was back on December 25th, 2020. So from a PvP standpoint, I see no reason why you could not have a single-use bedroll or choose an option to spawn relatively close to your body, you know, even 500 meters out from, in a 500 meter circle from your body would be better than running across the whole map. So what's base building like? I have no idea. I can't tell you if base building is good in this or not, because I gave up on trying to find a place to put down a land claim on the PvE server that I was on, because it was that frustrating. Let's talk about the survival aspects of the game. There's not much there. You have food, you have water. You run around looting little towns, little POIs in the woods, stuff like that, little things, houses here and there, little sheds, what have you, and you find all kinds of odds and ends. There's very limited crafting. You find mostly guns and ammo and clothing. Once in a while, you will find some soda and a can of beef, and that's your food and your water. There is water on the map, but you can't drink it. So there's rivers, lakes, and stuff like that. You cannot drink from them. When it comes to harvesting the wood and stuff for your base, you either buy or find an axe. You also need a hammer, you also need a saw, and you also need nails. When it comes to cutting down trees, you just stand at a tree and keep clicking. It gives infinite wood from what I can tell. I didn't harvest it too long, but it was about 10 minutes of harvesting wood at a tree, and it never stopped giving me wood. It never falls. It just sits there and instant, just continuously gives you wood every time you chop it. You have food and water. It's the only survival things you really have to worry about. And like I said, you can buy cans of beef and stuff like that from the traders, as well as soda. You can eat that, and and drink the soda. That's your survival stuff in the game. Now there's alcohol in the game too. There's vodka we found and moonshine, but apparently that's used for crafting and not the survival elements of the game. There is no temperatures or anything like that. The survival elements of the game are very, very bare bones. As far as crafting goes, there is some crafting, like you can craft your base stuff. There's other little random odds and ends like flashlights and weapon mods and stuff like that you can craft, but I never bothered to craft any of them because I was finding the stuff and it's easy to buy the stuff from the trader. You're going to spend a lot of time just scavenging stuff, selling it to the trader, and then buying stuff from the trader. That's pretty much the crafting of the game. I mean, there is crafting, but it's easier to buy and sell at the trader. So I would call that the game's actual crafting mechanic. And the funny thing is you can't even spawn at these safe zones where the traders are for free. They're actually more expensive to spawn at when you die than it is to spawn at a random city that would be closer to where your body is. And then obviously spawning random location is for free, which makes no sense for me. It should always be free to spawn at the trader, because if you die, you're not going to spawn there with anything, so you really can't exploit. Now, it's funny because there are random POIs near the trader. NPCs spawn at them relatively quickly. Me and Whack were actually able to go farm a place, get a bunch of good loot, then go to the trader, sell it all, go back to that place, and the NPCs were already respawned there. So getting money in the game to buy things, super easy to do. Gunplay was pretty good. I don't really have any complaints for gunplay other than every time I would aim, if I would turn into something like a wall or something like that, if I wasn't peeking, it would kick me out of aim mode, which was a little frustrating because I wouldn't mind it. Like I'd like to aim even if I'm looking directly at a wall and peek out and shoot, but instead you have to peek then aim, and when you stop peeking it puts you back into third person. Now there is third person and first person view, and that apparently can be configured per server, so you can force people into only first person. I'm guessing on PvE they don't care that you're in third person, so I of course was running around in third person because I could not do first person in this game at all. The head bob sway, all of that, even the times where, because when you aim down the sights, it puts you into first person view really quickly, really flawlessly. Even the times that I was doing that, the head bobbing and the swaying and the gun bobbing in front of me, just, yeah, it was a little rough for me. So if you have nausea issues, it's doable, but I would not play on a server that forced you into first person all the time. There's also mods for the guns. Now this really frustrated me because we got a Mosin, it's a bolt action rifle, and they were just dropping like crazy at this one spot we were farming, and we wanted a scope for it because it would be really strong with a scope. We essentially wanted to go from playing this game to Sniper Elite, and we were all about it. So we go to the trader, we had money for a scope, Whack bought a scope, it didn't fit. I bought a scope that said it only goes on Mosins, and it wouldn't fit on the Mosin that I had. So if the scope that he had, which said it would fit most guns, wouldn't fit on the now there were two different Mosins. There was the 𝐴 and then just the Mosin. The scope that he had would not fit on the 𝐴, even though it said it fit on most guns, and the scope that I had that said it fit on a Mosin wouldn't fit on the 𝐴. So it was a little frustrating there. I think they should be a lot more flexible with their mods. Like, who cares? Like, it doesn't matter. Also, the ammo, oh my god, there's so much ammo in this game. It's insane. Every gun has its own ammo, and there's just tons and tons and tons and tons of different ammos in this game. It's crazy. That could drastically be limited. But overall, I don't have a lot of complaints as far as like, I mean, it shoots, it's gun, it shoots, they were fine. I like that you can peek from corners. That was nice. Aimed down the sights, looked nice. They fired well, handled well. Don't have many complaints when it comes to the gunplay, other than that issue we were having getting a scope on a Mosin. I'm not sure how that goes with other guns, but something else the game lacks a lot of is just tooltips and information. It literally drops you into the game and tells you absolutely nothing. There is no little mini tutorial, not even like a screen that says, hey, do these things first. Absolutely nothing. It drops you in and you're just left to figure it out. And then there's a ton of different things that don't even have tooltips. So you get this thing and you don't even know what it's for, and you don't know the price on it, if you should hold on to it or not, until you go to the trader. So it's just missing a lot of information that you would expect to be there that is there in most games. So as I stated in the beginning, this game is early access, so all of this stuff in the long run kind of gets a pass because the game is still being developed. So while I find a lot of things with the game frustrating and it's just really not a game for me right now, this could all change when the game is in a more finished and complete state. So I think this is one that I'm just going to shelf for a while, and maybe a year or two, come back and check it out and see how it's come along. Because honestly, if they make respawning and getting your body back a little less frustrating, make base building a little less frustrating, add some random wildlife to the map that you can hunt and cook the meat from them on an open fire, stuff like that, drink from the random rivers and lakes and stuff that are on the map, and just improve that survival aspect just a little bit, I would probably really enjoy this game. There's definite potential here, but as it stands right now, I don't like it at all. It's just not for me. I'm sure it's for some people. As I said, it's got positive, a lot of great reviews on Steam, so they got to be doing something right. But yeah, right now, not for me, not at all. All right, that is going to wrap it up for this episode. I want to give an absolutely massive shout out and thank you to my supporters on Patreon for making this episode possible. Y'all are absolutely amazing people. If you would like to join my Elite Crew Patreon supporters, please check out the link in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. If you're shy, you don't like to comment, just hit that thumbs up button and show your support. Until next time, thanks for watching.